I just realized we're coming to the end of March now, and I still haven't done my top 10 video, which my intention was to get it done January, so sorry. But despite how busy I've been with writing and work, I still want to get a top 10 video out because I enjoy them and because algorithm. Now, before we start, I do have to preface that these are books that I read in 2024, not books that came out in 2024. And now that I mention it, I don't think I actually read anything that came out in 2024. And finally, these are my top 10 books that I enjoyed, meaning number 10 might be a better book than number 1 or 2, but I enjoyed 1 or 2 more. And with that in mind, let's begin my list of the top 10 books that I enjoyed in 2024. Now, starting things off at number 10, we aren't doing a book, we are doing a manga, which some would consider cheating, but oh my god, I enjoyed this so much, it would be criminal not to include it in my list. And that manga would be Berserk, from volumes 18 to 42. I made this my mission.
You're my mission.
I had already started it by 2023, but I kept stopping and starting at certain arcs after I finished the Golden Age arc. But oh my god, I enjoyed this so much. I'm glad that I'm up to date, with the exception of probably the newest chapter. I'm just waiting for the next volume to be released. If you haven't read manga, highly recommend. It is a bit like some would hesitate to read it just from the first panel, but highly recommend. It's one of the best mangas I've ever read. Coming to number 9, we have The BlackTongue Thief. Now, when I began The BlackTongue Thief, I was immediately set into the world. From the history to the dark tone, from the point of view of the hilarious protagonist. It has a unique magic system around tattoos, and a very interesting take on goblins that I don't think I've ever read elsewhere. I actually just finished reading the prequel, The Daughter's War, and I think that's arguably better than this one, but yeah, they are two very different books, whereas this one kind of gave me Deadpool vibes in terms of the humor around the protagonist, and the prequel was just war. Now, the reason it's not high on this list is because it kind of fell off for me towards the end in regards to the plot. I honestly felt this story could have been better if it just followed the main protagonist with some lower stakes, and maybe even just it was a bunch of short stories. I feel like it would have been a 10 out of 10. But regardless, I still think it is a great read. I kind of want to reread it after finishing The Daughter's War, but yeah, maybe one day. Next, on number 8, we have a criminally underrated book that I somehow was able to find, A History of an Executioner. Now, funny story with this one, I was in Vegas at the time on a holiday, and went to a bookstore. I was looking in the discount section, and I somehow found this. I read the back of it, and I thought, oh, this is very similar to a book I'm writing and trying to get published right now. So with that, I picked it up, bought it, read it, and I loved it. If I were to describe this to someone, I would say it's The Stranger meets historical fantasy. Now at number 7, we have a series that I was very keen to start. I have read the second book, which is so much better, but I still enjoyed book 1, and that would be Red Rising. I knew going into this was arguably the weakest book, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters, the world building is some of the best I've ever written, from the reds to the golds, obsidians. If you've read it, you know what I mean. If you haven't, pick it up. It's basically Roman Empire, sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy, and I love it. Now, number 6 is a reread. I've recently been using Audible to reread/listen to some of my favorites. I just don't have the time to read physically my favorite books, and that would be The Fifth Season. I am so glad I revisited this. This is actually in like one of my top 10 books of all time. It's actually rare that I enjoy a book more doing a reread. I've only done a reread on like Dune, Hyperion, and now The Fifth Season. Yeah, it's just enhanced my understanding of this book and the story, the characters, everything. If you haven't picked this up, please do. It is a magnificent book. The trilogy as well is magnificent. They all won a Hugo Award. If you don't know what that is, I'm sorry, look it up. Dark fantasy, interesting magic system, amazing characters, and a hell of a plot. With number 5, I am shocked and now embarrassed to confess that I finally read 1984. I finally understand why it's so important that we have to read this in high school, or at least Brave New World, which is very similar. I dare say that I've read it at a time where it's more relevant than ever, which is scary, but also very fascinating. If you're a fan of dystopians, please pick this up. It is amazing. It is the go-to dystopian book in my opinion. I've read some others, but I think this one tops it. Don't be like me and wait until you're 24 years old to read it. Read it if you're just getting into reading, or you want something a bit different, or if you like dystopians. It's a must read. Next at number 4 was probably the biggest shock for me in 2024. So for context, I'm currently studying a TAFE course online that's involving editing and writing. And one of the units we have to read a fair amount of books involving Dodger by Terry Pratchett and Jane Eyre, a few books here and there that are considered classics. But along on the list was a book called Station 11. I read the back of the book many times before starting it, and I said to myself, I'm not going to enjoy this. This sounds boring. And then I read it. This is a dystopian at its best. It has the best combination of just drama, action, as well as suspense. And it's a very unique book in terms of its pacing. It jumps back and forth between different characters and different points in time, while still being cohesive somehow. A criminally underrated book. I feel like it's not getting as much love as it should. If you love dystopian, please read this, maybe after 1984, because 1984 is a bit more essential in my opinion. But this one, I enjoyed it a lot more. Next, we have my number 2 and 3. Just because, well, I can't tell which one I enjoy more. I think most fans of this series will agree with me that these two specifically are very hard to rank above each other. So for that reason, I'm tying them because I could nitpick, but I think both of them I enjoyed just as much as the other. And of course, I'm talking about the Stormlight Archive and books 2 and 3. I'm honestly tossed between the two. For one, I enjoyed Words of Radiance a lot more than Oathbringer in terms of pacing, something Oathbringer I think lacked a lot. But then again, Words of Radiance, I'm not the biggest Shallan fan, and I feel like she got the spotlight a lot more. Whereas I wanted more Kaladin, I wanted more Dalinar, and on the other hand, I love Dalinar's flashbacks, and the final act of Oathbringer is just amazing. So for those reasons, I can't in good conscience rank either 2 or 3. I love them both so much. Very good books. Now, before we talk about my number 1 book of 2024, I do have some honorable mentions. These are books that are still good, but I just couldn't put them on the list. And those books are mine. I'm kidding, of course. These aren't my favorite books. That I can't do that. But seriously, if anyone watching would like to support me as a self-published author, I have 2 books here that I wrote in 2024. These are novellas, very short books. So if you want something short, pick these up. They're very easy to read. They're 99 cents on Kindle. My first book is Lost Orbit. It's about a scientist who has to figure out what's happened to Earth after it suddenly disappears. And the other is a fantasy comedy about a king who decides to leave his kingdom and try to meet his pen pal before he passes away. If you like Terry Pratchett, you'll enjoy this. If you like Andy Weir's The Martian or Project Hail Mary, thanks for listening to my self-advertisement. I do appreciate it. And of course, if you do enjoy those books, please leave a review. Now let's get to my number 1 book of 2024. If you know me as a person, then you know I'm very easily impressed when a book can make me physically react. So whether it's crying or gasping in shock when a character dies, or in this case, laugh. And my number 1 pick of 2024 definitely made me do that on multiple occasions. The book I'm talking about is, of course, Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is a book and series I think anyone who enjoys video games should read, even if you're not much of a reader. Pretty much this guy called Carl is sucked into this world called Dungeon Crawler World. Basically a game show where people are given video game mechanics, inventory system, RPG mechanics like skills and strength, charisma, and we follow Carl as he tries to survive this world and progress each level. But I will end this with a note that if you're not convinced to read it already, there's a talking cat called Princess Donut. But anyway, this was fun. I definitely want to do more YouTube videos when I have the time. I kind of want to just do some book reviews or even do some breakdowns of my self-published journey and maybe even go through my books. Anyway, thanks for watching and please subscribe, like, do all the stuff. I'm very new to this. I'm trying to get into it and, you know, get more attention on my books. But hope you enjoyed and thanks for watching.